The Valaxian research ship Star Whisper was in serious trouble. The sleek vessel, usually gleaming white against the stars, looked like a broken toy floating near the volcanic moon called Pyrex 7. Captain Zilvara could feel the ship shaking. As another explosion rocked through the damaged hull, red warning lights flashed everywhere, and the air was getting thinner by the minute. "Status report," Zilvara called out, her voice strained as she gripped her command chair. The bridge was filled with smoke, and several control panels were sparking dangerously. "Hull breach in sections 4 through 7, reported her science officer, Kethlin, his usually calm voice cracking with panic. "Life support is failing fast. We have maybe 2 hours of breathable air left, and that's if we're lucky." The research mission to Pyrex 7 had seemed routine when they started. The Valaxians were known throughout the galaxy as excellent scientists, always eager to study new worlds and phenomena. They had come to this volcanic moon to collect samples of rare minerals that formed only in extreme heat. It should have been simple. Land, collect samples, leave. But everything had gone wrong when an unexpected volcanic eruption caught them off guard. Zilvara looked around at her crew of 11 researchers and specialists. These were some of the brightest minds in Valaxian space, and now they were all going to die because of her decision to land too close to an active volcano. The guilt was eating at her, but she couldn't give up. "Not yet. Send out a distress call," she ordered. "All frequencies. Maximum power. Someone out there has to hear us." Her communications officer, a young Valaxian named Asara, worked frantically at her damaged console. "Captain, most of our communication array is destroyed. I can only broadcast. On basic emergency channels, do it anyway," Zilvara said firmly. "Send our coordinates, crew count, and situation. Keep broadcasting until we run out of power." As Desara worked, Zilvara stared out at the hellish landscape of Pyrex 7. The moon's surface was covered in flowing lava rivers that glowed bright orange against the dark sky. Volcanic gases created thick clouds that would kill any Valaxian. In seconds, the temperature outside was hot enough to melt their ship's hull, which is exactly what was happening right now. "Messages broadcasting," Captain Desara reported. "But I have to warn you, we're at the edge of civilized space. The nearest Valaxian colony is 3 days away, even at maximum speed. No one can reach us in time." Zilvara nodded sadly. She knew their situation was hopeless, but she had to try. The message was simple. "This is Captain Zilvara of the research vessel Star Whisper. 12 crew members trapped on Pyrex 7. Life support failing. Requesting immediate assistance. Coordinates follow." What none of them knew was that their desperate signal was traveling much farther than expected. The volcanic activity on Pyrex 7 was creating strange electromagnetic effects that boosted their transmission far beyond normal range. The message was bouncing off solar winds and magnetic fields, carrying their plea for help toward a part of the galaxy that most civilized species avoided completely. The Sol system was marked with warning beacons throughout the galaxy. It was home to a species that other aliens called Deathworlders, in hushed, fearful voices. Stories told of creatures that survived on a world so dangerous that it would kill most galactic citizens just by breathing the air. These beings were said to thrive in conditions that would be considered tortured by civilized standards. But Zilvara didn't know any of this as she watched her crew prepare for death on the volcanic hell. Pyrex-7. Captain Lee Deho was enjoying his morning coffee when the bridge alarm started screaming. The resilient Dawn had been on a routine patrol mission near the outer edge of human space, checking on mining operations and trade routes. It was supposed to be a quiet week, the kind where the biggest problem would be a broken navigation beacon or maybe a drunk cargo pilot who needed an escort home. But as Deho rushed to the bridge, still holding his steaming mug, he knew this wasn't going to be a quiet day after all. "What do we have?" he asked, settling into his captain's chair. The bridge crew was already buzzing with activity, their faces lit by the glow of various screens and displays. "Unknown signals, sir," reported Communications Officer Park Sojin, her fingers dancing across her console. "Human ship or colony. The language is completely foreign, but the AI is picking up distress markers." Deho raised an eyebrow. First contact with an alien species wasn't something that happened every day, even out here on the frontier. Play. It backed. The bridge speakers crackled to life with a series of sounds that definitely weren't human. The alien voice was higher pitched than most humans, with a musical quality that reminded Deho of wind chimes. Even though he couldn't understand the words, the desperation in that voice was crystal clear. AI translation coming through now. Sir Sojin announced. Words began appearing on the main screen. 12 crew members trapped. Life support failing. Requesting immediate assistance. The bridge fell silent as everyone absorbed what they were hearing. This wasn't just first contact with aliens. This was aliens asking for help. Where is it coming from? Deho asked. Engineer Kim Taman looked up from his calculations, his face serious. The signal originated from Pyrex-7, sir. That's the volcanic moon in the Kepler system, about 6 hours away at maximum jump speed.
Excellent.
Navigation officer? Yoonji Hai whistled low. That place is a nightmare. Surface temperature over 300 degrees Celsius, toxic atmosphere, active volcanism everywhere. We've had it marked as a no-fly zone for good reason. Deho nodded grimly. He'd heard about Pyrex-7 from other deep space crews. It was the kind of world that killed ships just for getting too close. The fact that someone was stranded there meant they were in serious trouble. Can we reach them in time? Yes, Tay-Min was already running the numbers. If we leave right now and push the engines past recommended limits, we might make it. But sir, the fuel requirements for this kind of emergency jump will leave us running on fumes. We'd barely have enough to get back to the nearest fuel depot. The bridge crew exchanged glances. This wasn't an easy decision. They were talking about risking their own ship and lives for beings they'd never met, from a species they knew nothing about. The smart, safe choice would be to relay the message to Earth Command and let them decide what to do. But Ho was looking at the translation scrolling across his screen. 12 beings were dying out there, and the Resilient Dawn was the only ship close enough to help. How long do they have? Yes, so, Jin. She checked her readings again. Based on their transmission, maybe 2 hours of life support left. Be less 2 hours. That was cutting it incredibly close, even if everything went perfectly. And nothing ever went perfectly during rescue operations, especially not on a world like Pyrex-7. Deho stood up from his chair and looked around at his crew. These were good people, trained for exactly this kind of situation. They'd pulled miners out of collapsed asteroids, rescued survey teams from gas giant storms, and once even saved an entire colony ship from a black hole's gravity well. All right, people, he said, his voice steady and sure. We've got beings in trouble, and we're the only ones who can help them. Sojin, send a message to Earth Command letting them know what we're doing. Taemin, start prepping the engines. For emergency jump, Jihai, plot us the fastest course to Pyrex-7. His crew didn't hesitate. It served together for 3 years, and they all knew what kind of man their captain was. If someone needed help, Lee Deho was going to provide it, no matter what species they were, or how dangerous it might be. Aye, sir, came the chorus of responses as everyone got to work. The Resilient Dawn dropped out of hyperspace with a violent shudder that sent everyone grabbing for handholds. Captain Lee Deho felt his stomach lurch as the ship's artificial gravity struggled to compensate for the rough transition. Outside the viewports, the hellish landscape of Pyrex-7 spread out before them like something from humanity's worst nightmares. Sweet mother of ... whispered navigator Yoonji Hai, staring at the main screen in disbelief. The alien ship Star Whisper was barely recognizable anymore. What had once been a sleek research vessel now looked like a half-melted toy sitting in the middle of an active lava field. Rivers of molten rock flowed around it like glowing orange rivers, and thick black smoke poured from volcanic vents scattered across the moon's surface. The air itself seemed to shimmer with heat distortion, and occasional flashes of lightning cracked through the toxic clouds. Environmental readings coming in, reported engineer Kim Taman from his station, his voice tight with concern. Surface temperature is holding steady at 315 degrees Celsius. Atmospheric composition is mostly sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and carbon monoxide. Basically, it's like breathing liquid poison mixed with acid. Deho nodded grimly. he'd seen. Some rough environments during his 15 years in deep space rescue, but this was something else entirely. How close can we get? Not very, Taman replied, checking his instruments. The heat signatures are playing havoc with our sensors, and there's too much electromagnetic interference from all that volcanic activity. I can get us within about 2 kilometers, but any closer, and we risk damaging our own hull. Communications Officer Park Sojin looked up from her console with worry written across her face. Sir, I'm still picking up life signs from the alien vessel, but they're getting weaker. Whatever kind of life support they're using, it's failing. Fast. In the ship's equipment bay, rescue specialist Yoon Ji-hai was already suiting up in her environmental gear. She'd been doing this job for 8 years. She'd learned that the key to successful rescues was preparation and speed. Every minute they spent talking was another minute those aliens were dying. Park, get me everything you can about their ship's design, she called over her shoulder while checking her suit systems. I need to know where their crew compartments are likely to be located. Her team was moving with practiced efficiency. Around her, Manik Choi Minho was loading his equipment with medical supplies that could work on unknown alien biology. Engineer Nam Yujin was gathering cutting tools and emergency power units. Former military specialist Han Wujin was checking the power cells on his exoskeleton suit. Environmental suits are rated for temperatures up to 400 degrees Celsius, Wujin reported, his voice calm and professional. Atmospheric scrubbers can handle the toxic gases for about 4 hours of continuous exposure. Should be more than enough time. Yoon Ji-hai couldn't help but smile at his matter-of-fact tone. To most species in the galaxy, what they were about to do would be considered insanely dangerous, if not outright impossible. But for humans who'd grown up on a world that regularly tried to kill them with everything from hurricanes to earthquakes to volcanic eruptions, this was just another challenging work environment. Remember, people, she said, activating her suit's cooling systems. We don't know anything about alien biology, so be careful with physical contact. Their bodies might react differently to temperature, pressure, or even our touch. Minho, you'll need to figure out their medical needs on the fly. The medic nodded, his face serious behind his helmet's faceplate. I've loaded the medical scanner. With every biological template we have on file, hopefully, the AI can make some educated guesses about their physiology. Captain Deho's voice crackled through their helmet combs. Landing shuttle is prepped and ready. We'll have about a 10-minute flight to the crash site. Then however long it takes to get those aliens out of there. The longer you stay on that surface, the more stress you'll put on your equipment. Understood, sir, Ji-hai replied, leading her team toward the shuttle bay. We'll get them out fast. As they walked, she could feel the familiar pre-mission adrenaline starting to kick in. This was what she lived for, the moment when training, equipment, and human determination came together to snatch life from the jaws of death. The fact that they'd be saving an entirely new species just made it more interesting. Just another day at the office, she muttered to herself, checking her plasma cutter. One final time as they prepared to descend into what the galaxy would consider an uninhabitable Shept. The shuttle touched down on Pyrex 7's surface with a hiss of cooling metal against superheated rock. Through the reinforced viewports, rescue specialist Yoon Ji-hai could see the alien ship up close for the first time. Star Whisper looked even worse than it had from orbit. The elegant curves of its hull were warped and melted, and she could see gaping holes where the volcanic heat had eaten through the metal like acid. Atmospheric readings are off the charts, reported engineer Nam Yujin over the CUM system. The air outside would kill most carbon-based life forms in about 30 seconds. Good thing we're not most life forms. Ji-hai couldn't help but grin inside her helmet. Humans had a way of turning deadly situations into casual observations. Right, people, let's move. According to our scans, the aliens are holed up in what looks like an emergency compartment near the ship's center. We'll need to cut through about 3 meters of twisted hull to reach them. The team stepped out onto the moon's surface, and immediately Ji-hai felt the incredible heat trying to penetrate her environmental suit. Her cooling systems kicked into high gear, and she could hear the steady hum of the life support equipment working to keep her alive in this hellish environment. Former military specialist Han Woo-jin activated his plasma cutter and approached. the alien ship's hull. "This metal is unlike anything I've seen before," he observed, running his scanner over the surface. "It's some kind of crystalline composite. Beautiful work, but it's not holding up well to the heat. Just cut through it," Jihai ordered. "We don't have time for materials analysis." The plasma cutter came to life with a bright blue flame that was barely visible against the hellish orange glow of the surrounding lava flows. Wu Jin began cutting a large circular opening in the ship's side, the alien metal parting like butter, under the intense heat of human technology as they worked. Medik Choi Minho was preparing his equipment for whatever they might find inside. "I've never treated alien injuries before," he admitted over the cum. "This should be interesting. You'll figure it out," Jihai assured him. "You always do." The hull breach was almost complete when they heard something that made everyone pause. A sound was coming from inside the alien ship, a high-pitched, musical voice that was clearly trying to communicate. Sounded scared, desperate, but also hopeful. "They know we're here," Jihai said. "Let's give them some good news." With a final burst of plasma, Wu Jin completed the opening. The section of hull fell inward with a metallic clang, revealing the interior of the alien vessel. The air that rushed out was hot and stale. It was filled with smoke and the acrid smell of burning electronics. Jihai peered inside and immediately spotted the survivors. They were huddled together in what looked like an emergency shelter made of the same crystalline material as the ship's hull. And they were unlike anything she'd ever seen. The aliens were tall and elegant, probably about 2.5 meters in height, with long, graceful limbs and skin that seemed to shimmer with an internal light. Their faces were narrow and refined, with large eyes that reflected the orange glow of the volcanic landscape outside. They looked like living works of art, beautiful and delicate. And they were staring at the human rescue team with expressions of absolute terror and amazement. Chief Researcher Velthera pressed herself against the back wall of their emergency shelter, her iridescent skin flickering with patterns that indicated extreme stress. She had never seen creatures like these before. They were short and stocky compared to Valaxians, covered in bulky armor that made them look like walking tanks. But they were moving through the toxic atmosphere outside as if it were a pleasant spring day. "Impossible," she whispered in her native language. "No one can survive out there. No one." But here they were, these strange beings, casually working, in conditions that would kill a Valaxian in seconds. One of them, the smallest of the group, approached their shelter with some kind of scanning device in hand. Velthera watched in fascination as the creature began taking readings. Its equipment far more sophisticated than anything she would have expected from what the galaxy called Deathworlders. Medik Choi Minho knelt down near the opening of the alien shelter, holding his medical scanner steady as he tried to get readings on the survivors. The device was having trouble with the unknown biology, but it was picking up what appeared to be elevated stress indicators and signs of oxygen deprivation. "They're in bad shape," he reported to the team. "Whatever they breathe, they're not getting enough of it. We need to get them out of here fast." Jihai nodded, then did something that surprised even herself. She reached up and removed her helmet, exposing her face to the toxic atmosphere for just a moment. The aliens gasped in shock as they saw her human features, the round face, the small eyes, the strange flat nose. Then she put the helmet back on before the poisonous air could do any real damage. "Did she just ... Velthera started to say, then stopped. These creatures were even more impossible than she had thought, getting the aliens out of there. Damaged ship was like solving a deadly puzzle while racing against time. Rescue specialist Yoon Ji-hai quickly assessed the situation inside the emergency shelter. 11 Valaxians were huddled together, their beautiful iridescent skin flickering with what she guessed were stress patterns. But one was missing. "There should be 12 of you," she said, knowing they probably couldn't understand her words, but hoping her tone would convey the question. "Chief." Researcher Velthera pointed deeper into the ship with a trembling hand, her musical voice rising in pitch with obvious distress. She was trying to explain something urgent, gesturing frantically toward a collapsed section of the vessel. "Someone's trapped," Engineer Nam Yujin observed, scanning the wreckage with his equipment. "Life signs are weak, but present. About 15 meters that way, under a pile of debris. Jihai felt her heart sink. 15 meters might as well have been 15 kilometers in this environment. The ship's interior was a maze of twisted metal, sparking electronics, and structural damage that could collapse at any moment. The temperature inside was still over 200 degrees Celsius, and toxic gases were seeping in through multiple hull breaches. "I'll go," said former military specialist Han Wujin, his voice calm as always. He was already checking the power levels. On his exoskeleton suit, the mechanical frame that amplified his strength by a factor of 10. "Not alone, you won't," Jihai replied. "Minho, you're with him. I'll start getting these 11 to the shuttle." The next few minutes were controlled chaos. Jihai began the delicate process of moving the Valaxian survivors one at a time. Each alien had to be carefully lifted and carried through the toxic atmosphere to their shuttle, which meant exposing them to conditions that could kill them in seconds. "Their biology is fascinating," Medic Choi Minho observed as he worked. "They're like living crystal formations. It's beautiful, but incredibly fragile compared to human physiology." Meanwhile, Wujin was making his way through the wreckage toward the trapped alien. His powered exoskeleton allowed him to push aside chunks of debris that would have been impossible for an unaugmented human to move. The mechanical servos whined under the strain, but the suit held up perfectly. "Found her," he announced over the com. Young female, pinned under what looks like a support beam. "She's conscious, but in bad shape." The trapped Valaxian was indeed young, barely more than Anne. Adolescent by her species standards. Researcher Kasara had been collecting data samples when the ship crashed, and she'd been thrown into a maintenance compartment when the hull buckled. Now a twisted piece of the ship's frame had her legs pinned, and she was slowly suffocating. In the toxic air, Kasara looked up in terror as this strange armored figure approached her. She had never seen anything like it, a creature that moved through her people's death trap as if it were taking a casual walk. The being knelt beside her and began examining the debris that held her trapped. Wujin said softly. Though he knew she couldn't understand the words, he hoped his tone would be reassuring. "We're going to get you out of here." The support beam that had Kazara pinned weighed at least 2 tons. For most species in the galaxy, moving it would require heavy machinery or a team of workers. But Wujin simply grabbed it with his exoskeleton's powered hands and lifted it, as if it were a fallen tree branch. Kasara gasped in amazement as the crushing weight was suddenly gone. This impossible creature had just casually lifted something that should have been beyond the strength of any individual being. Before she could fully process what had happened, another armored figure appeared beside her. Minho quickly scanned Kasara with his medical equipment, frowning at the readings. Severe oxygen deprivation, possible internal injuries. But she should survive if we get her to a proper atmosphere fast. "Can you carry her?" Wujin asked. "I've got her," Minho replied, carefully lifting the young Valaxian in his arms. She weighed almost nothing to him, her delicate frame feeling as fragile as spun glass as they made their way back through the wreckage. Kazara found herself staring up at the face behind Minho's helmet visor. These creatures were so different. From her people compact and solid, where Valaxians were tall and graceful, with features that seemed almost brutal in their simplicity. But there was something in this being's eyes that transcended species differences. It was the look of someone who genuinely cared about saving her life. Back at the shuttle, Jihai was loading the last of the other survivors when her team emerged from the wreckage. "How is she?" she asked. "She'll make it," Minho reported. "But we need to get them all to a proper medical facility as soon as possible." As the shuttle lifted off from Pyrak 7's hellish surface, the Valaxian survivors pressed themselves against the viewports, watching the human rescue team with expressions of wonder and disbelief. They had just witnessed beings who treated their death world as merely another workplace challenge, who risked their lives for complete strangers without hesitation, and who possessed technology and physical capabilities that defied everything. They thought they knew about the galaxy. For the first time in galactic history, civilized species had met true Deathworlders, and instead of the savage monsters they expected, they'd found heroes. The moment the Valaxian survivors stepped aboard the resilient Dawn, they realized they had entered another kind of hell. Ship's artificial gravity hit them like a crushing weight, making their delicate bones ache and their graceful movements turn clumsy and painful. What felt normal to humans was like being pressed down by an invisible giant's hand. "This is impossible," gasped Chief Researcher Velthara, struggling to stay upright as she breathed the ship's atmosphere. The oxygen levels that humans found comfortable were like breathing fire to her people. Each breath burned her lungs, and the temperature that the humans considered pleasant felt like standing next to a furnace. Young Kasara collapsed to her knees the moment she tried to walk, her legs shaking under the crushing gravity. The other Valaxian survivors weren't doing much better. Some were leaning against the walls for support, while others had given up trying to stand altogether. Captain Lee Deho watched this with growing concern. He'd expected some differences between species, but he hadn't realized just how extreme those differences would be. "We need to do something," he told his crew. "They're suffering in our standard environment." But the humans didn't hesitate. Within minutes, the ship's engineering team was working to convert one of the cargo bays into a makeshift medical facility designed specifically for their alien guests. Engineer Kim Taman worked frantically to adjust the atmospheric processors, reducing oxygen levels and filtering out gases that were toxic to Valaxian biology. "Gravity generators are more tricky," he reported to the captain. "I can reduce it by about 60% in the cargo bay, but any lower in our own equipment might start malfunctioning." "Do it," Deho ordered without hesitation. "We'll deal with equipment problems later." Meanwhile, ship's Dr. Nam Yujin was facing the biggest medical challenge of his career. He had 12 alien patients with biology he'd never encountered. Before injuries he'd never seen, and no medical textbooks to guide him. But he did have Chief Researcher Velthara, who despite her own pain, was determined to help treat her people. "Your medical scanners are remarkable," Velthara admitted as she watched Yujin work. She was speaking through a translation device that the ship's AI had quickly programmed. "I've never seen diagnostic equipment this precise, especially not from ... She paused, clearly struggling with what she wanted to say. "From Deathworlders?" Yujin asked with a gentle smile. "Yeah, I get that a lot. Most people assume we're all violence and no brains." Velthara's iridescent skin flickered with embarrassment patterns. That was exactly what she had been thinking. In her world, the galaxy spoke of Earth's inhabitants in whispers, describing them as savage beings who survived through brute force and aggression. The idea that they could possess advanced medical knowledge seemed impossible, but here she was, watching this human doctor perform medical procedures with a skill that rivaled the best Valaxian healers. His equipment could analyze cellular structures in real time, identify toxins at the molecular level, and even predict how different treatments would affect alien biology. "How do you know so much about treating injuries you've never seen before?" she asked, genuinely curious. Yujin chuckled as he worked on treating one of her crew members' burns. "When you come from a world that's constantly trying to kill you, you get really good at emergency medicine. Hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, toxic plant life, venomous animals, extreme temperatures. Earth has pretty much every way to injure or kill a living being that you can imagine. And you've learned to treat all of those injuries." "Two," Eugene replied simply. "Survival demanded it. Plus, humans are incredibly diverse compared to most species. We've adapted to live everywhere from frozen wastelands to scorching deserts. That means our medical science has had to become flexible enough to handle just about anything." As the hours passed, the Valaxians began to realize something that challenged everything they thought they knew about civilization. These humans, these so-called primitive Deathworlders, weren't just surviving through brute strength, were thriving through intelligence, adaptability, and an incredible capacity for innovation. The modified cargo bay was a perfect example. In less than 4 hours, the human crew had transformed a simple storage space into a fully functional medical facility with atmosphere, gravity and temperature controls tailored specifically for Valaxian physiology. The level of engineering skill required for such rapid adaptation was staggering. "Your people?" Velthara said to Yujin as he finished treating the last patient. "They're not what we expected." "What did you expect?" he asked. "Monsters," she admitted quietly. "The galaxy tells stories about Deathworlders. We thought you were savage creatures who survived through violence and instinct. Yujin nodded thoughtfully. I guess from your perspective, we probably do seem pretty violent. But here's the thing about humans. We don't just adapt to survive. We adapt to help others survive too. That's what makes us who we are, as if to prove his point. Engineer Taman appeared with news that the environmental systems were now perfectly calibrated for Valaxian comfort. Communications Officer Park Sojin had established contact with the Valaxian government to arrange for pickup. And Captain Deho had already ordered the ship's food processors to synthesize nutrition that would be safe for their guests' biology. For the first time since their rescue, the Valaxians felt truly safe. And they were beginning to understand that their rescuers were far more than the savage Deathworlders of galactic legend. They were something much more remarkable. They were a species that turned their world's attempts to destroy them into the tools to save others. The journey to Valaxian space would take 3 days at maximum speed, which gave both species plenty of time to get to know each other. What started as polite exchanges quickly turned into fascinating conversations that left everyone amazed at how different their worlds really were. Chief Researcher Velthera was the first to share her people's story, speaking through the translation device while the humans gathered in the modified cargo bay. Her voice took on a dreamy quality as she described the Valaxian expansion across the galaxy. We call ourselves the children of perfect worlds, she explained, her iridescent skin glowing softly in the dim lighting. For thousands of years, we've searched for planets with ideal conditions. Perfect temperature, clean atmosphere, gentle weather patterns, and abundant resources. We only settle where life can flourish without struggle. She gestured to show images of Valaxian colonies on her portable display device. The humans watched in amazement as scenes of paradise unfolded before them. Crystal cities built on worlds with eternal spring weather, floating gardens above lakes that never experienced storms, communities where the biggest environmental challenge was deciding whether to have lunch indoors or outdoors. We have 17 colony worlds now, Velthera continued proudly, each one carefully chosen for its stability and safety. Our children grow up never knowing fear of their environment and never have to worry about sudden weather changes, dangerous animals, or natural disasters. Young Kesara nodded enthusiastically. On my homeworld of Serenity Prime, the temperature varies by only 2 degrees throughout the entire year. The wind never blows harder than a gentle breeze, and it rains for exactly 1 hour every 3rd day at sunset. The humans exchanged glances, trying to imagine such a predictable, peaceful existence. It sounded wonderful and terrifying at the same time. What about your world? Velthera asked Captain Deho. Earth, isn't it? What's it like? Deho scratched his head, wondering where to even begin. Well, it's complicated. Earth doesn't really cooperate with us the way your worlds do with you. What do you mean? Kasara asked, her large eyes blinking with curiosity. Pilot Shin Haiwan laughed from where she was sitting. Where I grew up in Korea, we have what we call monsoon season. For about 3 months every year, it rains so hard that entire cities can flood. The wind gets so strong it can blow cars around like toys. The Valaxians stared at her in horror. And people still live there? Velthera asked. Oh, sure, Haiwan replied casually. We just build better drainage systems and stronger buildings. My grandmother used to say that monsoon season was when the Earth tested whether humans were tough enough to stick around for another year. Engineer Kim Tommen joined the conversation. That's nothing compared to where I come from. I grew up near Mount Baekdu, which is an active volcano. Every few years it would rumble and shake, reminding everyone that it could explode at any moment. But we never moved away. Instead, we just got really good at monitoring volcanic activity and building earthquake-resistant structures. Your planet has exploding mountains? Kazara whispered, her skin flickering with what the humans were learning were fear patterns. Lots of them. Taman confirmed cheerfully, plus earthquakes that can level cities. Hurricanes that are basically giant spinning storms with winds over 200 kilometers per hour. And tornadoes that can pick up buildings and throw them around like toys. The Valaxians looked like they were about to faint. The idea of living on a world that actively tried to kill its inhabitants was beyond their comprehension. But here's the interesting part, added medic Choi Minho. All those disasters taught us how to be really good at emergency medicine, disaster response, and rescue operations. When a hurricane hits, humans don't panic. We have emergency plans, stockpiled supplies, and trained teams ready to help anyone who needs it.
Oh, Doctor.
Nam Yujin nodded in agreement. Every major city on Earth has specialized teams for dealing with fires, floods, earthquakes, and other emergencies. We've turned disaster response into a science because we had to. Earth gave us no choice but to get good at it. That's impossible, Velthera protested. No civilization could develop properly under such conditions. How do you build cities if earthquakes can destroy them? How do you grow food if storms can wash it away? You build them stronger, Daiho explained. In Japan, they have buildings that can flex and bend during earthquakes instead of breaking. In the Netherlands, they've built an entire country below sea level and kept the ocean from flooding it for centuries. In Australia, people live in deserts, where the temperature can kill you, but they figured out how to thrive there anyway. Communications Officer Park Sojin had been listening quietly, but now she spoke up. I think what my friends are trying to say is that Earth never gave us paradise, so we had to create our own. Every challenge our planet threw at us, we found a way to overcome it. After a while, we stopped seeing disasters as problems and started seeing them as, well, just another day's work. Tornado season, earthquake preparedness, hurricane tracking, wildfire management, High One listed casually. These are just normal parts of life for humans. Every kid learns about them in school the same way they learn basic math. The Valaxians sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they were hearing. These humans spoke of natural disasters that could wipe out entire Valaxian colonies, as if they were minor seasonal inconveniences. They talked about living on a world that actively tried to kill them with the same tone other species used to discuss gardening. No wonder, Velthara whispered finally. No wonder you were able to rescue us from Pyrax 7. For you, it wasn't impossible. It was just another dangerous place that needed some humans with the right equipment. Young Kasara looked at the humans with a new kind of awe. You're not monsters at all, she said softly. You're the galaxy's ultimate survivors. As the resilient dawn approached the edge of Valaxian space, Captain Lee Daiho found himself facing the most important moment in human history. This wasn't just a rescue mission anymore. It was first contact between humanity and an advanced galactic civilization. The decisions made in the next few hours could determine whether humans would be welcomed as equals or feared as dangerous outsiders. Incoming transmission from the Valaxian Defense Fleet, announced Communications Officer Park Sojin, her voice tight with nervous energy. It's on a military frequency, and they're demanding we stop and identify ourselves immediately. Through the viewports, the human crew could see the Valaxian response force approaching. 3 sleek warships that looked more like works of art. Then military vessels glided through space with an elegance that took their breath away. The ships seemed to be made of the same crystalline material as the research vessel they'd rescued, and they practically glowed with internal light. There. Beautiful, whispered Navigator Yoon Ji-hai. I've never seen spacecraft that look like that. But beautiful didn't mean harmless. The ship's sensors were picking up energy readings that suggested those elegant vessels carried enough firepower to turn the resilient Dawn into space dust if they wanted to. Be through to their commander, Daiho ordered, straightening his uniform, and patched Chief Researcher Velthara into the conversation. They'll want to hear from their own people. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the lead Valaxian warship. Admiral Cathora appeared on screen. And Daiho's first thought was that she looked like a warrior goddess from ancient mythology. She was tall and imposing even by Valaxian standards, with skin that shifted between silver and gold patterns that seemed to indicate authority and command. Unknown vessel, Admiral Cathlora's voice rang out through the translation system. You are carrying citizens of the Valaxian Republic in space that has been quarantined for good reason. Explain yourselves immediately, or we will be forced to assume hostile intent. Before Daiho could respond, Velthara moved into view of the communication screen. Admiral, please listen to me, she said urgently. These beings are not hostile. They've saved our lives when no one else could reach us. The Admiral's expression shifted from suspicion to confusion. Velthera, we received your distress signal 3 days ago, but our rescue fleet reported that your ship's location was unreachable. How did these ... creatures manage what our best pilots could not? Because Velthara replied with a mix of wonder and respect in her voice there. Not like us, Admiral. They don't see impossible the same way we do. Engineer Kim Taman had been monitoring the Valaxian ship's approach, and what he was seeing amazed him. Captain, he said quietly, their technology is incredible. Those ships are using energy. Fields I've never seen before, and their hull design suggests they can travel at speeds we can only dream of. But Admiral Cathora was having her own moment of technological surprise. Her chief engineer had just whispered something in her ear that made her crystalline skin flicker with shock patterns. Commander, she said slowly, addressing Deho directly, for the first time, my sensors indicate that your ship has been operating in the Pyrex system. Our data shows that system contains environments with surface temperatures exceeding 300 degrees Celsius and atmospheric toxicity that would kill most known life forms in seconds. That's correct, Deho replied simply. That's where we found your people. Impossible, the Admiral stated flatly. No civilization has technology capable of surviving such conditions. Our own ships would be destroyed by that environment in minutes. Dr. Namujin stepped forward. Admiral, if I may, he said respectfully, what you call impossible, we call Tuesday. Ow. Technology isn't designed for perfect conditions like yours is. It's designed for the worst conditions we can imagine, and then some. To demonstrate his point, Yujin activated a holographic display showing some of humanity's extreme environment equipment. The Valaxians watched in stunned silence as images appeared of humans working inside active volcanoes, walking around in the vacuum of space, and operating machinery under crushing ocean depths. This is your standard equipment? Admiral Cathora asked, her voice barely a whisper. For rescue operations, yes, Medic Choi Minho added. Every piece of gear we carry is built to function in environments that would destroy normal equipment. Because on Earth, normal equipment just isn't good enough. The Admiral fell silent, and Deho could see her mind working to process what she was learning. Everything she thought she knew about advanced civilization was being turned upside down. In Valaxian society, advancement meant creating perfect conditions and avoiding all challenges. But these humans had advanced by embracing challenges and conquering them. Your people, she said finally. You've built your entire civilization around surviving conditions that would be considered uninhabitable by galactic standards. That's one way to put it, Deho agreed. We prefer to think of it as being prepared for anything. Ankesara, who had been listening from the background, moved forward to address her admiral directly. They're not dangerous to us, she said earnestly. They risked their lives to save complete strangers. They modified their own ship to make us comfortable, and they've treated us with nothing but kindness and respect. Admiral Cathora looked at the human crew with new eyes. These weren't the savage primitives that galactic legend described. They were something far more remarkable as civilization that had turned adversity into strength, challenges into capabilities, and impossibility into routine competence. Commander Deho, she said formally, on behalf of the Valaxian Republic. I would like to officially welcome humanity to the galactic community. It appears we have much to learn from each other. As the Valaxian escort ships took positions around the resilient Dawn, forming an honor guard rather than a threat. Captain Deho realized that this rescue mission had just changed the course of human history forever. 3 months after the rescue at Pyrex 7, Chief Researcher Velthera stood before the Galactic Council on the neutral world of Harmony Station. The massive chamber held representatives from over 200 different species, all gathered to hear her official report about humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. The air hummed with translation devices working in dozens of languages as beings from across the galaxy waited to learn about these mysterious Deathworlders. Honored council members, Velthara began, her iridescent skin glowing with formal presentation patterns. What I am about to tell you will challenge everything we thought we knew about advanced civilization. She activated the holographic display, showing images from the rescue mission. The assembled aliens gasped as they watched human rescuers walking casually through environments that would kill most of them instantly. Some representatives from particularly delicate species, actually, fainted when they saw footage of the humans cutting through the burning wreckage on Pyrex 7's surface. These beings, Valthera continued, operate in conditions that our best scientific models classify as completely uninhabitable. They don't just survive in these environments, they work in them, routinely, as part of their normal job duties. Ambassador Kethrin, from the Peaceful Collective, raised one of his forearms. Surely you're exaggerating, researcher Valthera. No sapient species could develop advanced technology while constantly fighting for survival. Valthera smiled, an expression that translated well across species. That's exactly what I thought, Ambassador. But I was wrong. The humans didn't develop their technology. Despite their harsh environment, they developed it because of it. She showed more footage. Humans building earthquake-resistant cities, hurricane-tracking satellites, and rescue equipment that could function in the vacuum of space. Every piece of their technology is designed to handle the worst possible conditions, because their homeworld taught them that anything less would mean death. The Galactic Council chamber erupted in excited chatter as representatives tried to process this information. The concept of a species that thrived on adversity was completely alien to civilizations that had spent his millennia seeking perfect conditions. But, surely, interjected High Scientist Zilquan from the academic worlds, such a violent background must have made them aggressive and warlike. Young Kasara, who had been invited to share her perspective, stood up to respond. Honored Council, I was trapped under debris, dying in a toxic atmosphere. These violent beings risked their lives to save me, a complete stranger from a species they had never met. They asked for nothing in return except the chance to help. She activated her own display, showing images of the humans modifying their ship's environment to make the Valaxian survivors comfortable. They gave up their own comfort to ensure ours, shared their food, their medical knowledge, and their technology freely. If this is what the galaxy calls violent behavior, then we need to redefine our terms. The impact of these revelations spread far beyond the council chamber. Within days, news networks across the galaxy were broadcasting the story of the human rescue mission. The phrase calling the Deathworlders became shorthand for attempting the impossible on the mining world of Pharaoh Prime. Workers trapped in a collapsed tunnel joked darkly that they needed some humans with their impossible technology. On the research station orbiting the gas giant Tempest, scientists studying dangerous atmospheric phenomena began saying they wished they had human-designed equipment that could handle such extreme conditions. But the real change came in how the galaxy viewed challenges themselves. For thousands of years, advanced civilizations had solved problems by avoiding them, finding safer planets, developing more comfortable technologies, creating perfect living conditions. The humans had taken the opposite approach, somehow achieved results that exceeded everyone else's capabilities. Captain Lee Daeho found himself at the center of this galactic transformation when he received an invitation to address the emergency response coalition, a group of species dedicated to disaster relief across the galaxy. Captain Daeho, said Coalition Director Velmarin, we would like to formally request human participation in our operations. Your people's expertise in hostile environment rescue could save countless lives. We'd be honored to help, Daeho replied simply. That's what we do. Within 6 months, human rescue teams were operating throughout the galaxy. When a massive earthquake struck the crystal cities of Shardworld, human engineers were the only ones who could navigate the unstable ruins to reach survivors. When a solar flare damaged the atmosphere processors on New Eden, human technicians worked in radiation levels that would kill other species to repair the critical systems. The Sol system's quarantine barriers came down officially. But more importantly, they came down in the minds of galactic citizens. Humanity wasn't just accepted into galactic civilization, they were welcomed as the specialists who could handle what everyone else considered impossible. Back on Earth, the crew of the Resilient Dawn watched news reports of human teams working across the galaxy with quiet pride. They had started with a simple rescue mission, and ended up changing how an entire galaxy thought about the word impossible. Not bad for a day's work. Engineer Kim Taman observed as he watched footage of human teams helping to evacuate a colony threatened by volcanic eruption. Captain, Deho smiled as he looked out at the stars. Where human ships now traveled freely among civilizations that had once feared them. Just goes to show, he said, sometimes the best way to make friends is to prove you'll risk everything to help a stranger. The galaxy had learned that when you needed someone to face the impossible, you called the Deathworlders. And humanity had learned that their greatest strength wasn't their ability to survive. It was their refusal to let others face survival alone.